What is up, everybody? Welcome to not the bargain bin. It is just Jacobus on his own channel doing his own thing. I have forgotten what I've called this show as it happens. Jacobus Talks with. I'm just going to bring him straight in because he's the guest of honor with Don Chun.
Hello, Jacobus. Good to see you.
How's it going? How's it going?
Good evening. I'm doing great. Very nice. I just had my lunch, so that was good.
Oh man,
I had
I'm
some
going to
lunch.
go to bed after this stream, and you're just having lunch.
Yeah, we're about 8 hours difference.
I spoke to Dean James while he was streaming this morning. Like, I'm cooking bacon in the kitchen for my breakfast, and he's doing a stream before he goes to bed as well.
Oh wow!
So, it's amazing that we all come together with such weird time zones and still interact and stuff. Right. Before we jump into what will be a very nice, pleasant, casual conversation, just going to jump into the chat because E.T. Madness was here yesterday. That's how excited he was for it. And Nefarious didn't want to wait 22 hours. He wanted it right then, but we are here now. Bristolian Dave, alright, me babbers.
All right, me babas.
And Aria Blackness.
Aria.
Oh my god, it's Mr. Gotex, the one and only. So, Don has very kindly accepted being my first guest in this video series, streaming series, where we're going to get to know Mr. June in a nice relaxed manner as best we can.
You're very relaxed. I feel like I just had a massage. You're like putting me at ease.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I've got my feet up and everything. I have. So to start with, what got you into comic books?
Well, I grew up. I was born in the early '60s, and I like cartoons on TV, Saturday morning cartoons, and so I kind of got introduced to cartoons that way. And then when I started to become of reading age, I would buy comic books off the spinner rack, and a lot of those, like when I was probably in elementary school, were kind of the all ages types of comics. I don't know if you grew up with like Richie Rich or.
Nah, our comic books were very different over here. Like, we didn't. Well, we probably did have. Well, we definitely did have comic book shops, but I didn't know about them growing up. All we had was what was in local newsagents, which were. I want to say like a Panini type thing, where you had. It was like two random stories of like Batman shoved together. And you didn't know what story was from what, and it was a mess. It was horrible.
We used to have a lot of stores, just like your corner supermarket and grocery stores would have spinner racks. So we didn't really have a comic book store per se growing up where I live, which is in California. So most of the comic books I would get would be like at convenience stores similar to 7-Eleven or Circle K. Yeah. And yeah, so they were on the spinner rack, and we would buy. I was really attracted to like funny animal type comic book characters. For some reason, a character called Top Cat comes to mind. I think it was a Hanna-Barbera character. And so I got to get introduced to comics through entry-level publishers like that. And then I gravitated towards superheroes as I got older. And Heavy Metal magazine was a big influence to me when I was in high school. Comic strips were a big draw. Back in the day, there weren't a whole lot of, paperback collections of strips. It was just what you would read in the daily newspaper. and on Sundays you would get the insert that was full color, a few pages, and you could read like BC or Peanuts or Prince Valiant, kind of a mixture of both funny and adventure type strips. So I have a kind of a background in comic strip publications as well, which I don't actually talk about too much. Most people are kind of curious about my comic book work, but I did a lot of reprints of comic strip collections. And
you're gonna have to tell us about them.
Yeah, I have a couple examples of things that we published. So let me see. After that, I have to always give a big nod to Charles Schulz, the creator of Peanuts, because I think growing up I could remember, religiously reading the Peanuts comic strips. And for some reason, someone gave me a set of books that were comic strips of a collection of hardcover Peanuts books. And I just remember tracing those and wanting to draw like Charles Schulz. And so he kind of inspired me to, to not just read, but actually I wanted to replicate comic strips and single panel cartoons. So I had a kind of a diverse influence, a mixture of comics and comic strips and animated shows.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. How about you? Did you grow up reading a certain or watching a certain show? Or
I mean, for me, the Saturday morning cartoons consisted of Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Then it was the 90s X-Men cartoon, which is amazing. The Spider-Man cartoon, which is amazing. Dragon Ball Z, which I still love and watch today. Pardon me, I think everyone I know that has got into comics all started on Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah,
it's just kind of rolled from there.
You're mentioning a lot of things that I know what they are, but because there's kind of an age gap between us. Everybody talks about X-Men, like the animated series. I've never really even watched that, but it seems to be a very popular show, along with the other ones that you mentioned. And Dragon Ball Z was.
How have you never watched the X-Men cartoon? That's like
I know.
So
I was I don't know, during that was probably the 90s, right? The X-Men cartoon was out. Yeah. It is puzzling because I'm a big X-Men fan, and you would think that because there weren't any movies of the X-Men until like 2000 that I would have gravitated towards the cartoon. But for some reason, I don't know. I didn't. I think maybe I was a new father at that time, and I had a girl. So my daughter was not really into that genre. She was more, female appropriate, like Barbie. She liked things like Sonic the Hedgehog and video game characters, but she wasn't really into X-Men and so forth. But
one of the when I had my son, one of the things I was excited about was thinking like, all these cartoons I can rewatch and all these games I get to play again.
How old is your son now?
He's 10 now.
10. Does he like X-Men and all the things that you just mentioned, or?
He does. He's gravitated more towards anime than like the comic type people. Although he does like it. Like, he's seen all the films and all that kind of stuff, but he's more anime.
Did you watch any not really live action, but it was more like not cartoons, but it was more like I guess you could call it live action. Things like when I grew up, there was like Shazam and ISIS and Batman, the original, the original Adam West Batman.
I've seen that one. I haven't seen the others.
The other ones. I actually really remember being fascinated by the Japanese robot type of shows that were like Ultraman, Johnny Sacco, Godzilla. So those were a big influence. Just watching those really cheesy guys fighting in costumes. Uh, I still like that genre.
It's like I wanted to introduce him to the Power Rangers, but that's took such a decline that has. Like, if you think back to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was amazing, and whatever they've got now is just crap.
Yeah, I missed. We spoofed the Power Rangers, but I was never really a fan of that particular show.
Oh, I loved it. I did. Right, I need to jump back into the chat because I can see it scrolling. COVID Kev has joined us. How do? How do?
Hi, COVID.
Dave says something about Jack today. He looks smarter. I've got my glasses, which means I can sit in front of the computer and not destroy my head, so I can actually get more work done. It was the glove, really, Mike. Aria is a mod. Bristolian Dave is very kindly sharing all the links.
Thank you, Dave. Actually, you mentioned X-Men animated Jacobus, and the artist on our book, which is his name is Mark Lewis, and we just released X-Farce last month. But the guy that did this cover, and he also does the first story in the book, which is a throwback that I wrote to the Lee and Kirby era. So this cover is kind of a retro 60s homage to X-Men #4. And so Mark Lewis draws the inside of this, which is something we actually did originally back in the early 90s, but it was never in color. So we tried to kind of make it look like the Lee and Kirby original X-Men. But Mark, after he drew this for us in the 90s, he tried to make a go of it as a comic book professional comic book artist, and he got some work with Image and so forth. But he actually went into the animation business, and he's worked on the X-Men animated series for many years. And they just came out with a coffee table book that had a lot of his concept sketches and stuff in it. So in a roundabout way, he did a spoof of X-Men, and then he wound up working on the animated series, which you grew up watching. So it's kind of a fun.
That's amazing for him. That is. I bet when he started doing the spoof, he was like, "I'm never gonna get to work on X-Men now that I'm doing this."
Yeah, and he, I think he's done work for DreamWorks, and so he's fluent in both, the line art type of work, but I think he also does computer animated stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. That is. So Dave is agreeing Power Rangers is the one. Only the original one, I'm hoping, though. Super Mega Force. I don't even know what that is anymore. What? Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was the only good one. And haha, look at serious Jack. It's just the glasses. Look, if I take them off, I'm not serious now. I'm just normal.
Oh yeah. Oh. I think these make us look smarter.
Yeah, that's
it brings the nerd cred.
It adds a good 50 IQ, just a pair of glasses. You're pretty quiet, Jack. Bloody Mike said that as well. And the last time I did a stream, I did sort out my settings, so I don't think I should have to sort them out again. I hope. Let me just quickly go in and nope, that's fine. Sorry, Don. As you know,
that's okay. I like your background. It's kind of feels like Nightmare Before Christmas.
I mean, I would love to take credit for it, but I literally just nicked it off Google. And then done some very minor adjustments and slapped this
I like
beautiful
it.
face in front of it.
Yes.
Where is sound? Where's my mic? Manage sound devices. No, don't disable it.
Thank you, Dave. My fish tank TV they're all healthy and they don't require much maintenance, which is nice.
No, my settings should be fine. I'm probably just talking a bit quieter than normal because of how relaxed this stream is.
Let's relax. Just stretch it. Oh, I'm ready for an afternoon nap, my friend.
That's it.
What a week. What a week. Arya, you have a wrench now. Good for you, buddy.
Arya does have a wrench. No, Arya's been MIA for the last 2 days. He went to Liverpool. And then I haven't heard from him since. Little bastard. I'm guessing he's enjoying it.
I didn't know he was married. I think he just posted a tweet with his wife or his girlfriend. Did you know he was married?
No, I don't. I think they're just together. I don't think.
Oh, they're just together?
I think
sorry, Arya. I didn't.
Enough to be married.
What's the legal age to be married in? He's in Wales, though, right?
Yeah, they're a bit weird in Wales, but it's the same law.
Oh, okay. Drinking age in 18. UK is 18, right?
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
I think it's 14 in some rules.
Really?
There's no flake. Who the fuck set the flake?
I don't know.
That is the most disappointing thing in my life.
Uh-oh. Someone's in trouble.
So, I mean, she's just
Did you eat the flake?
I didn't eat the flake. I wish I did.
The flake, is that like cereal?
No, she's just got an ice cream out of the freezer and there's like a chocolate flake supposed to be in it, but it's not in there. So I get accused of eating half the ice cream.
Oh, I see. It's like you ate the coating off the ice cream and put it back.
Yeah,
that's a cardinal sin. This is the first to have the host be rated by his wife on a live stream. It's quite entertaining.
It happens quite a lot. And,
my wife brought me coffee, and she's very sweet. If you're watching this, Laura, thank you.
my wife is very sweet, but as soon as the live button goes on, she knows there's nothing I can do about
it. She's so professional.
Yeah.
Bristolian Dave says there's a flake shortage at the moment, so.
Yeah, that would explain it. He also says at 14 you can have a drink with a meal with a responsible adult.
Really?
Yeah, like you can have if you go to the pub for a meal, you can have a glass of wine and that with your dinner.
How about what's the driving age? The age that you have to be to have a license?
17 to drive a car.
That sounds about
16 for a motorbike.
Yep, that sounds about the same as over here. You can drive a car.
Cinderella licenses or something, don't you?
Over here?
I think so. Yeah. Is it like
Cinderella?
It might have just been like a slang term that I've heard, but like if you're under a certain age, you can't drive past like 10 o'clock or midnight or something.
Oh. Yeah, I'm not up on what the most recent laws are for driving age, but that doesn't sound too far-fetched from what probably some United States places do.
Yeah. Let's have a look. Although a lot of us started drinking in fields, he's absolutely bang on in the field at 13 with a big bottle of cider or something.
Uh-huh.
It's usually how it started.
Like taking it from your parents' cupboard or do you make your cider, Bristolian Dave? Is it that you have a moonshine set up in your house?
That's like a video series itself waiting to happen. That is like Bristolian Dave's Moonshine. That'd be awesome.
Hi, Mark. I miss Mark. I haven't seen him in ages.
I would invite Commie Mark on, but he doesn't stream before 10, I
10?
think. Yeah, 10 o'clock. So in like an hour and a half.
I was impressed. I was impressed. He made a GIF of himself, and he was pointing upwards, and it was a GIF, and I was going, that's a whole new level of social media that I'm envious of.
You'll get there. Michael McCartney says the USA is a bunch of countries pretending to be one.
That's a good observation. I can't disagree with that.
Imagine how much smoother it would run if everyone just ran their own place.
Is Michael a UK fan?
Well, he's in the UK, he's in Scotland, and most Scottish people aren't fans of the United Kingdom. So they've got this weird patriotism, even though Scotland's crap. So, yes. So yeah, let's carry on. Let's talk about how you got into comics. I've been that relaxed. I've started insulting half the globe. Let's talk about your first steps into like making
comics.
Going from like a fan to working towards that.
Okay. So I was starting to do cartooning, and when I got into high school, I really was wanting to do more cartoons and stuff. And our high school actually had a class that was a cartooning class. So I enrolled in it, and so a bunch of friends and I started to cartoon and do fun stories and so forth. And so in that class, we actually would come up with this stapled 8.5 by 11 do-it-yourself comic book. So this is probably like 20. Actually, it's over 30 pages, and it was called Strip Tease, and our brand was called Choke. We kind of made it look like the Coca-Cola logo, but we called it Choke. And so what everybody did was we would have students from each age do a parody story. So this one is not drawn by me, but it's done by a guy named Ross Turner, who actually is a very very prolific actor. I wouldn't say he's that famous yet, but he gets a lot of roles. He's been in some popular Netflix series and so forth. But he did this character called the Incredible Hulk, and it was a spoof of the Incredible Hulk. But what if the Hulk was a seagull? So this was one of the very early, like 1970s. Probably like 79 is when me and my friends were doing this. And this is like a real early strip that Parsonovich, who went on to do the Hamsters with me, did, called Stoner Man. And Stoner Man was basically a marijuana smoking guy, kind of like the Freak Brothers. But what was funny was that Parsonovich would do all this drug humor, but he was completely straight as far as he wouldn't imbibe in pot, but he just loved the culture, and so he would just do these funny spoofs about pot. And we live in the area in the United States called Humboldt County, which is where a lot of people think is the best place to grow pot. And so it's been a culture thing since I've grown up here in this area, just kind of making fun of the whole pot culture. And it's kind of like what fuels the economy, but nobody really talks about it. So yeah, anyways, I did all these weird strips. This is one called the Challengers of Stupidity. I kind of remember back in the 70s, there was a DC comic book called Challengers of the Unknown. So you can tell I wasn't that great of an artist. I mean, I tried, but I was no Parsanovich. Parsanovich was a lot better than me. So I just thought, oh, let me just stick to writing. And so Parsanovich and I started to collaborate, and then Choke kind of eventually came to this. We did a book, our very first comic book that we ever tried to publish on our own was called Overload. And it was we called it the Fantasy Humor Magazine. So if you could imagine Mad Magazine having a love child with heavy metal, that's kind of what Overload was. And we did 5 issues of this. And the first couple issues, we just tried to distribute locally. And it did okay. I mean, it was mainly my parents saying, go ahead and try to publish comics and get out of our hair. And we did all right. And then actually after the 3rd or 4th issue, we started getting distribution on the comic book, on this particular fanzine. And every issue would be like leaps and bounds better than the first one. So the very first one was really crude. It was all in black and white. And we spoofed the movie Alien, because me and Parsanovich were very big fans of the movie Alien. And we thought we were really good. And now I look back on that and I go, I can't believe I tried to get this published with Marvel and DC and stuff. But as we got better, I mean, the artwork and stuff, we started to get people of, with professional credits. This guy right here is Sam Ray, who is he's kind of my mentor. He worked up here in my area for the Forestry Service, and he saw our earlier issues on the newsstand, and he said, well, maybe I can help mentor these young undisciplined cartoonists. So you can just see the level,
in the right direction.
Right. He said, this is how you letter, this is how you compose a page. And Jacobus, back in the day, for gray tones, you would have to cut out on the line art. You'd have to get this stuff called Zipatone down at the art store, and it came on a thin plastic sheet, and you would overlay it on top of your black and white artwork, and then cut it out with an X-Acto knife. Because we didn't have Photoshop, we didn't have computers, really. I mean, we had basically like your Radio Shack type computer that didn't have any graphics. So all this stuff was all manual artwork, and it's all pen and ink. It's all fun stuff. So Overload.
What was the time difference between that one that you showed us that you made at high school and then that one?
Let's see.
Attempt?
What year was this? Actually, only about less than probably 2 years. So from the time you saw that kind of this crude high school version, this is the last issue of Overload. So this is number 5, which is the best, the best looking one. But here's number 3, where there's a rocket ship in the anus of a creature. Anyways, it was all black and white. And so, we were just kind of learning our craft as time went on. And so part of the journey in doing stuff like this, which is, your own publication, is you would have to promote it and try to get eyes on it. So we would drive, our high school gang would drive down to the San Francisco area, which is about 5 hours south. And we would go to these conventions that were big, like Creation Con was where you would have speakers from Star Trek actors, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Chris Claremont. All those guys would be guests for these shows, and they'd have them in these big hotel ballrooms over a weekend, and you would buy a table either as a artist or as a dealer and try to sell your comics or whatever you were peddling. So we would basically get in my dad's van and drive and sleep in this van outside of the venue, and we would unload our tables and our comic books, set them up, and try to sell our comics to whoever was walking by. So that's kind of how I started to rub elbows with people that were better known publishers, and I would run into people like Mike Mignola and Arthur Adams, who was another one, Steve Purcell, who did Sam and Max, and then Eclipse Comic Books was a publisher that was just starting to kind of get their name out there in the 80s, and so they had a comic book publishing outfit in my part of California. So we just kind of developed a relationship, and when I came up with the Hamsters concept, which was like in '86, they were one of the first publishers that I thought I would try to see if they would consider my comic book idea. And as luck would have it, that all worked out.
I just need to jump into the chat quickly because I've just
sure.
Comic Mark made his own cider once in the kitchen and it blew up and he had to repaint. I would
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some like communism moonshine. What Scotland joke is so quiet I could barely hear him. There's nothing I can do to fix my volume now. Might I suggest turning up your electronic device? That's just as an idea. He can somehow hear my wife in the background. Yeah, probably it's just me talking quietly then. But, let me share a screen because you mentioned the adolescent radioactive
black belt hamsters.
That's the one, black belt hamsters. I was going to say martial art hamsters, but I didn't.
It's all interchangeable adjectives. Hey, there's what Comic Mark edited my my profile on this a few months back.
Yeah, I watched that as it was happening. That was pretty cool. That was. So I was looking through these the other day, and like this Zen, like I've never even heard of this guy before.
Oh, really?
Like as a
oh, that's okay.
insult, or don't take offense to.
No, not at all.
So out of all of these that you've done, like which was the first?
Which was the first? The red one, the very first one up in the corner. The hamsters. Oh. I'm sorry, that's the Zen.
Yeah.
The comic find, actually, it doesn't go quite as far back as my first professional published work, and I've probably mentioned this on some other streams, but when I was growing up, Jacobus, there was a newsstand magazine that was similar to Mad magazine. I don't know if they distributed this in the UK, but it was called Cracked. Have you ever seen that before?
Honest, I haven't. I know of the title though. It sounds familiar.
They were kind of a rival to, almost like the ugly stepsister of Mad, and it had the same kind of satire, like a movie. But it's really well done. We're talking professional cartoonists, but it didn't really have quite the distribution like Mad did. I tried to break into Mad, but they were a pretty tight knit group of creators back then, and so Cracked seemed like something that I might be able to try to break into. So I actually started sending my ideas to this publisher. They're based out in New York, and that was in the early 80s. So the very first thing that ever got published professionally for me was Cracked. This was like December 1983. So I did about 3 or 4 different issues of Cracked, and so that was my very first paid work. And then the Hamsters was kind of the the thing that put me on the map for comic books. And it sold really well.
83
Yeah.
was 9 years before I was born.
Wow. Yeah, I'm an old guy.
Yeah.
So, 83, so you were born in 92?
Yeah.
Okay. So my daughter was born in 85. So you're not that much younger than my daughter. So anyways, the Hamsters was just supposed to be a one-shot knockoff of the Turtles, but it sold very, very well for Eclipse, and they said we would love to make this an ongoing series. So it ran, what you're looking at on the screen right now, those are the nine issues of the regular series, and we had a bunch of specials and
there's this 3D one.
Yeah, we did four 3D issues that are a lot of fun. They came with glasses in the spine, and you'd have to assemble the glasses, and you would read the comic book, and it would jump out at you. Those were done with the help of a guy named Ray Zone, who at the time was the predominant 3D. You have to do this special separation process that he takes the artwork and then he photographs them in layers, and he just knows how to make it work for print. So when it's printed, you have a red and a blue.
Yeah. Do you know Wooly in CG UK?
I don't think I know. Did you say Wooly?
Yeah. He made Elsa Dark, I think. And,
was it 3D?
Yeah, his was 3D in that same.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, he did it with the blue and red lines and that.
Did it turn out pretty well? Do you have a copy or?
I don't have a copy. I've seen it and it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, because not too many people know how to do that anymore. Ray passed away, I think in around 2010, and he was one of the few that knew how to do that separation process. But I would think with computers and everything these days, there's probably some kind of software that might be able to help person take line art.
A lot of things now are a lot easier than it was back then for comic making.
Right.
I mean, like you said, making them comics grayscale, you had to cut out stuff. I mean, we literally get pens that we put on a board and colouring on the screen. Look.
Exactly. Yeah.
Massive difference.
Yeah. All the lettering is all digital. So, back when I was doing the Hamsters, that was the 80s. And so everything was all organic on artboard. And then as we started to get into the 90s, when we were publishing, when I left Eclipse because they were starting to have some financial troubles, that's when we started Parody Press. And that was in the early 90s. And at the same time Parody Press was starting, I was running a computer store with my wife. So we were kind of at the right place at the right time when computers were starting to get enough power to process graphics and so forth. But we still had dial-up internet. So as far as sending digital files rapidly, that was going to be pretty far off in the future. So anything that we ever did that we'd have to send to a printer, we would have to put on a portable disk drive and then send it to the printer to basically create our comic books.
I bet you're glad how much easier it is now.
Very much so. Yeah, there used to be days where my wife and I would. Our primary printer was based in the Texas, but we also used one in Canada. So if you had a full color 32-page book, you'd literally have a box that probably weighed about 20 pounds worth of these SideQuest discs. These SideQuest discs were they were about this big and they were thick, and they only held like 88 megabytes per disc. So for every colored page, which would be a pretty big file, you can only fit a few pages on each side quest. So for a full 32-page book, you'd have to send them like a dozen of these discs, and then the printer would basically transfer your data from your side quest over to their server, and then they would compile the comic book that way. So we would be making these mad dashes to meet deadlines, driving our boxes to the FedEx at the airport. But now all you have to do is upload it, to a Dropbox or whatever, and now it's so much easier.
So, you started on adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters. What was next for you?
After the hamsters with Eclipse, I did. We actually brought Overload, which was the high school fanzine, to Eclipse, and we did one issue with them that was comic book sized, which kind of reprinted some of the best material from Overload. And then Enchanter, which you have the seventh book that you show down there. That was
this one,
yeah, that was one. What you're looking at there is actually we reprinted the Enchanter series from Eclipse, because I don't think I see the original 80s Enchanter from Eclipse on there. But Enchanter was my attempt to do something serious. So it has a kind of a darker fantasy element to it, with elves and sorcerers and stuff like that. And on that book, I was paired with a guy named Mike Drigenberg. And Mike was he was a guy that just sent me some work, and he lived in a pretty far away state. And so we started to develop this relationship over the mail and through the phone. And he was kind of eccentric. I mean, he was a lot younger than me, but he just was a really deep thinker. And when I saw his work, for someone that was like 18 or 19, I just was blown away, because this guy drew. He almost looked like he was almost like a Bernie Wrightson feel to his work at a very young age. And Wrightson was one of the premier horror artists of the time. And so I started working with Mike, and he actually did some inking for the hamsters. He did some covers for us, but right after he did Enchanter, which we were supposed to do 8 issues, but we stopped after the third one. He couldn't finish it. He was pretty slow, so we were starting to get some flack from our publisher that we couldn't meet deadlines. But it sold okay, but it wasn't really enough to maintain it being a regular title for Eclipse. But strangely enough, Jacobus, after Enchanter was done, he and Sam Keith went to go work on Sandman with Neil Gaiman. So Sam Keith went to fill in on the hamsters, like issues. He did issues 6, 7, and 8 after my primary artist, Parsonovich. He basically said, I can't keep up with a bi-monthly or even a quarterly schedule. It's just too much work. So he had to gracefully bow out. So I was left trying to find an artist to do the hamsters. And I met Sam through conventions. And so he just happened to be at the right place at the right time. He was just doing inking for a book called Mage that Matt Wagner did. But he really wanted to show people that he could draw, pencils and inks. So Hamsters is actually one of Sam Keith's first regular books. And we could all tell, Sam was phenomenal. So right after Enchanter and the Hamsters ended, Mike and Sam went over to DC, and their work on Sandman is still being reprinted to this day. It's very popular. And so there's trade paperbacks. So but I had heard that Sam didn't really enjoy working under the editors at DC. So I don't know how long he worked on Sandman, but that kind of led him to leaving Sandman and going to work on his own book, which is called The Max for Image, which is a pretty well-known series. It sold really well. So I've kind of lost contact with both those guys, but it was a real honor to work with such amazing talent. Dragenberg, I think, went on to do like covers for Tolkien paperbacks, and so he's a very, very good fine artist. But his line art was really spectacular. So my plan is possibly to reprint Enchanter as a trade paperback and finish the story that we never got to finish.
How did you feel doing a more serious story? Obviously, you're known for like your parody work.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, there's a serious side to me that I don't really get to express as much as I like to. So, to me, writing comedy and parody, it's almost like second nature. It's just the way that I'm wired. So when someone asks me to do something that's not parody, I look at it as a challenge. And Enchanter was actually very well reviewed, whereas Hamsters, I was getting a lot of flack that people just kind of thought it was like a cash grab, and it was. I mean, I have to say that when I saw the Turtles and I saw how popular they were, I just got it in my head that maybe somebody will read a knockoff of a knockoff, and it sold great. I mean, we sold like 500,000 copies total of Hamsters since they were invented. So Enchanter, I think, was just a good cathartic thing for me to do, because it could show that I'm not just a one-trick pony, that I can do other things. And I've done some science fiction work, and a lot of my stuff is probably like what you guys are doing for Twisted Fairy Tales. I like to take a story and make people think that they're reading something that's serious, and then I'll hit them with a zinger, like on the last couple panels.
Flip it on its head.
Right, that they're not expecting. So I kind of take that Mad Magazine influence and then that heavy metal influence and mesh them together for something that's visually stunning, but at the same time, I'm hoping at the end that you'll get a chuckle out of it.
Okay. So you did adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters, then moved on to Enchanter.
Correct.
The main two I see, the main three is Zen, Stargate, and Nera.
Nera X, yes. So to kind of do the chronological order, Jacobus, after Enchanter, which was like 87, I kind of had a lull. I was just kind of doing periodic hamster stuff. And there was actually a comic book called Target Airboy, which ties into the whole hamster storyline. It was the only color issue that Eclipse ever did that had the hamsters in it, because everything else was black and white. And I was a big fan of this adventure hero called Airboy, which was a pretty popular character for Eclipse. And so I approached them and I said, why don't we do a crossover with the hamsters, who I'm trying to make a little bit more serious as the series went on, and Airboy. And they agreed to it. And so Chuck Dixon and I collaborated on a hamsters Airboy story called Target Airboy that Sam Keith drew. So that was technically the last hamsters book was that one. And so after that had ended, I just kind of took a little break. But then I heard that Rob Liefeld was going to be doing this book called X-Force for Marvel, which was in the 90s. And it was supposed to sell. Everybody knew it was going to sell massively. and I think they actually wound up selling like 6 million copies of this X-Force book. And it's, of course, where Cable came as the main leader, and then Deadpool was another creation that Rob did about that time. So I thought this looks just perfect for spoofing. X-Force does. So I pitched X-Farce to Eclipse like in 1991 or 92, and they were all on board. They said, yeah, let's go ahead and do a spoof of X-Force. So X-Farce came out, and it was this very first book that I ever wrote that I did with artist Bill Mouse. And Bill Mouse and I, after we left Eclipse, he was our partner on Parody Press. So bringing back X-Farce, which is the book that I showed you earlier, that was kind of our return to comics and crowdfunding after taking such a long time off. But X-Farce was the best-selling book that I ever did. I think we sold like maybe 80,000 copies of it back in the 90s. And it was supposed to have a Todd McFarlane cover, but for some reason he had to back out of that commitment. But nonetheless, it sold great. And so that was the very last book I ever did for Eclipse. And then they went into financial, I think they kind of had to, I don't know if they declared bankruptcy or something, but they
stopped.
Yeah, they stopped. And so Bill and I said, well, we can do these parodies on our own. We don't need Eclipse. So that's how Parody Press got started. And so we did the X-Cons, which was another X-Men spoof, as the very first Parody Press book. And so that did really well. We probably sold around like 60,000 copies of X-Cons. And that kind of springboarded my ability to leave my day job, which was selling computers, and becoming a full-time comic book publisher and writer. So my wife and I we went all in. We basically set up an office in my house. We had copiers and computers. My wife was teaching herself how to digitally color and letter using Photoshop. So back then, no one was really showing you how to do digital coloring. You had to kind of learn it on your own.
Yeah.
So it was that kind of that time in history when comics went from that traditional, that line art that looked like it was kind of painted with, markers and, watercolor or whatever pigment. And then it shifted to digital. And so when Image came out, the look of their books was pretty dramatic compared to what everybody else was coming out with, because you had such a big palette now using a computer that you never really had if you just had dyes and pigment and stuff. And so we were just kind of at the right place at the right time to have this computer equipment that most people really couldn't afford. So we were using that to help us do comic books. And before long, a lot of our books we were doing all digital. You've got that Zen book up at the top. That's got a chromium cover on it, and chromium is it's kind of an engraving process. It looks like it's a what would you call it? Like a foil, but it's got like really brilliant colors and looks like it's got some depth to it and so forth. So Parody Press was doing great, and then Zen came into our lap because the publisher of Zen the creator of Zen was looking for a new publisher. He was being published by Archie, and Archie just kind of did a sanitized, kind of like a Captain Planet version of Zen. But the creator of Zen said, I kind of want more of a hard edge to him. So he found us, and at the time, Jacobus, Zen was being represented by Mark Friedman for licensing, and Friedman was the wonder kind that made the Turtles licensing phenomenon. So we were hedging our bets that Zen might have the same amount of popularity as the Turtles, because the Turtles had like their toy line, movie, cartoon, comic book. Zen had a toy line, video game, action figures already, before we came along. So we just thought, why try to create our own character to get popular when we can use this already existing franchise to kind of be our flagship. So that's, Zen was our main superhero fantasy sci-fi hero. And then Nira X was a character that Bill drew as a sidekick to Zen. And then she started to take off. She had her own following. And this was all like at the same time that characters like Lady Death and all the bad girls were starting to be, popular. So Nira X is kind of our answer to that. And so we just did a bunch of other offshoot books, and we had two companies running simultaneously. Parody Press would be the humor side, and then Zen and Nira X and Aster and these other characters were more like the superhero imprint.
Yeah. So one thing I've got to ask, because I was shocked when I seen this in I seen this in the list of your work, is Stargate. How did that happen?
Stargate was a obviously everybody knows it's a movie and a TV series. So back in the mid 90s, Jacobus is when the movie came out with Kurt Russell and James Spader. And my wife and I are huge science fiction fans, and we love Kurt Russell. So when we saw Stargate in the movie theater, we really liked it. I mean, we really thought it was we saw it multiple times. And for some, I guess just serendipity happened. We were at San Diego Comic-Con with Entity and Parody Press, and there was a guy that was representing Stargate for licensing, and he was going to different publishers along with James Bond, which was an MGM movie property, as Stargate was. And he was looking for people that would possibly be interested in paying a licensing fee to publish either James Bond or Stargate. And obviously everybody knows James Bond is a well-known character, but what they wanted to ask a publisher to pay up front for the fee was a little bit more than we could afford, because we were a small company, but we were growing and we were doing well. But Stargate, because it was an unknown commodity other than just the movie coming out, the fee for that was substantially less than James Bond. So we said, we would love to do Stargate. So we signed a contract with this licensing firm that represented Stargate, and we got to do, I think our contract ran for like 2 or 3 years. So we adapted the movie, and the very first issue, which was the movie adaptation, was one that I wrote. And Shelby Robertson, who is a CG artist, he was actually one of our first finds. We actually published quite a few artists that are pretty well known now, but Shelby, I could tell even at a young age, he kind of had that Liefeld look to his work, and we were kind of looking for that. And so Shelby drew issue number 1. That cover that you're looking at right now, that's a variant cover that he drew. And so that's kind of how Stargate happened. And we did, I think we probably published like 12 to 15 issues of Stargate. And then I got out of the comic book business in the late 90s, and our license had expired. So we just kind of let it go to somebody else. And I think Dynamite has the license now, but it was with Avatar for a little while. But are you a Stargate fan, or?
I dipped into it a bit in my teenage years, and I quite enjoyed it, but there was a lot to catch up on.
Yeah. Did you like the primary TV show, the one that had James Dean Anderson in it, or?
Yeah, that was what I started on. then I went on to
Richard Dean Anderson. Yeah.
the spin-off one. Was it Atlantis?
Atlantis. Yeah, the one with Jason Momoa.
Yeah. Had all the knives in his hair in it.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah,
that's a fun series. It's funny because we actually ran into Dean Devlin, who was the co-creator of Stargate with Roland Emmerich at a San Diego con, and we had just printed the very first issue. So I was fortunate enough to hand them an issue of the book that we just did, and I waited in line. There's a huge line for him to sign things. So I gave him a few copies of the Stargate book that we did, and he signed. This is Dean Devlin, the creator of Stargate. He signed our Stargate book. So this is one of my prized possessions. Is a copy of the Stargate comic that that he created, that we got to do the adaptation to. But I heard that he actually did not like the way that the TV studios did the series. I think he didn't own the rights. I think MGM did. And the plan was, I think, to make Stargate a trilogy, like with the Kurt Russell and James Spader characters. And I heard they're still working on possibly doing that, even though these guys are getting pretty old. But that was the initial plan. But for some reason, MGM decided to not greenlight the movies and just sold the rights to this other production company that did the Stargate shows that we're talking about. But I had heard Dean Devlin did not like what the TV studios did with Atlantis and stuff.
I don't think any movie companies are happy with TV adaptations and vice versa, are they? That's something that will never change.
Right.
So what was next on your list after Stargate?
After Stargate, if you scroll down, I don't know what other things are on that list.
They're mainly just various.
Yeah, a lot of Nira. Snowman was another one that people will probably know because it's an all caps comic book now that Ethan Van Sciver's resurrected with Matt Martin. Yeah. So Snowman we did, Snowman 1944. We did some Captain Nauticus. Captain Nauticus was we moved our office from California to Virginia in the 90s, and there was this. Do you have any like aquatic theme parks in England, like a SeaWorld or?
We do, but they're small and few and far between.
Okay. Nauticus was not really one where you had like dolphins and whales. It was more like set up in a naval shipyard, and it was really there to promote ocean conservation. And they would have like, you could pet like a manta ray or, pick up a starfish inside this complex. So Nauticus was kind of the city of Norfolk, Virginia's idea as a tourist attraction to bring people to this museum that you could walk through, like an interactive museum. It was quite state of the art. So this PR company reached out to Bill and I and my wife because they had heard we were publishing comics just in their area. And they said, we would love to do this hero that's based on our complex, and we want to call him Captain Nauticus. And he's basically going to be kind of a Aquaman, Captain Planet type.
Yeah.
Like a pet seal, and this team of humans and aliens from Atlantis that are here to make sure we don't stink up the ocean. So we ran that for a few issues. And then one that you're showing right now, though, that some people don't know, at the very bottom is Megaton. Yeah. So Megaton was a fanzine that a guy named Gary Carlson did. And Gary was in the 80s. He was like one of the godfathers of independent superhero comics. Like when Marvel and DC were doing their thing, he thought, oh, I like to do my own universe of heroes. So he started this magazine called Megaton, and he had a real high, standard of quality, and he was doing stuff that was very kind of reminiscent of Marvel and DC, but not using their characters. And he was a black character, Megaton is, which was kind of unusual because back in the 80s, you didn't have too many black characters other than like Luke Cage or Black Lightning, Falcon. So long before then, before what we have now with Black Panther and stuff, he had this black character called Megaton, and the whole Megaton universe had different characters in it. And so Gary was starting to get this buzz that he was a small press publisher, but the work in Megaton was like with guys that were just on the edge of breaking into Marvel and DC. Yeah. And so Eric Larson, Butch Guice, Angel Medina, Rob Liefeld, all these guys before they went over to the big companies actually got started in Megaton, which ran for like 7 or 8 issues. And so my friend Ken Meyer, who did one of our Clint Hamster miniseries, he was already been corresponding with Gary about doing a story. So he asked me to write a story in Megaton. I think it was in issue number 2 or 3. So me and Ken have this story with a character called Pharaoh in Megaton. And those are hard to come by because they were not very, they didn't have huge print runs. And because I think there's even like the very first appearance of Rob Liefeld's Youngblood was in Megaton. And the very first Savage Dragon appearances, other than what Eric Larson published himself, were in Megaton. So they're kind of a rare, scarce fanzine type of comic book that it's in the price guides and stuff, but people are looking for those books because they show early work of guys that are basically superstars in the industry right now. So overall, Jacobus, I would say between Entity and Parody Press, we probably published a good couple hundred different comics. So to go chronologically, in my mind, it starts to become a blur because there were days, months we were publishing 4 or 5 different titles a month. And, Bill was just cranking out these parodies and I was writing them. And back in that day, not like it is now, it wouldn't be unlikely for us to sell 10 to 20,000 copies of a comic book, and the money was pretty good. But now, if we were to sell that kind of number with crowdfunding, we would be millionaires. but it's a different time now. Distributors. Yeah. There's not very many distributors anymore. There's not that many local comic book shops. So selling back then was a lot easier than it is now. Yeah.
Well, making them's not, but selling them is. So it's swings and roundabouts in that sense, isn't it?
Yeah, it still takes the same amount of work to create the comic book, but as you know, crowdfunding, and a lot of the people that are probably in the chat or watch this in a replay that are creators, it's a lot of self-promotion that I didn't have to do when I was, back in the 90s, and we didn't have YouTube. The only way you would really get your name out there is if you put an ad in the Diamond, solicitation magazine, or Wizard magazine, or comic scene, which are all now defunct. There was no Facebook presence. There was no Twitter. It's only through word of mouth, or when you go to a convention, that's kind of how you meet potential new fans. But now with the advent of the internet, we can do things like we're doing right now and basically bring the comic book to the end user, which is it's fascinating. And it's, if you do it right, you know, there's money to be made, but there's a lot of product out there, so you kind of have to make it unique.
There's like a lot of fish in that ocean. You've got to really get to the top to
exactly
make yourself well known.
And you've got a good your concept is cool. I mean, a lot of the CG UK people are coming out with very unique books. You know, Arya's got his kind of a anthropomorphic, you know, galactic hero, and Kami Marx, you know, got his own cool version of humor and satire, and then you guys are doing this twisted fairy tales. So I think I like what I see coming out of your, you know, your country, and it seems different than what's happening here in the States.
Yeah.
You almost kind of seems like you guys are bringing that British humor over that. You know, I kind of grew up. I liked a lot of Monty Python and stuff like that. You know, Benny Hill, Rowan Atkinson stuff.
I was just gonna say you must have loved Blackadder.
You know, I have not watched it, but my wife just subscribed to Acorn TV, which I saw a picture of Rowan Atkinson, and he looked all, you know, like a villain. And I'm going, that's Rowan Atkinson. I guess this is one of his early. Would I like it? Is it kind of Monty Python-ish?
Amazing, it's so good.
Is it a comedy?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
You should absolutely love it. I'll be a bit disappointed if you don't.
Okay, I'll check it out. We're watching. I think I told you when I was in the green room, my wife and I have been watching a lot of BBC programming. To be honest, the American programming is kind of insulting to my intelligence, especially like the sitcoms with the laugh tracks, and the dramas to me aren't. There are some that are good, but they just seem like they've really kind of taken a dive. But we like. We are watching a BBC series called Line of Duty, which is a really good cop. I think it deals with anti-corruption, and they've had like 5 or 6 series, and it's had. We really like it. We're on the last season right now, but we've been binge watching Line of Duty for like the last month, and it's interesting because a lot of the accents we have to kind of get used to understanding the way that Brits talk. So we'll have to kind of watch it with the subtitles on. But the acting and just the quality of that show is, you know, I think Brits have a lot of good shows that Americans are not that familiar with. And so I feel like we've untapped this gold mine of entertainment. And now you're recommending Blackadder, so I'll have to check that out.
Especially like Rowan Atkinson is like a comedy genius, but you've got Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie in there as well.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, it's just so good. It's so good.
My wife saw, you know, when you're looking on the online streaming, we just subscribe to either Acorn or BBC or whatever it is, but she said, "Oh, look there's Fry and Laurie." She says that gets really good reviews, and I looked at it and I'm going, that guy looks really familiar, and she goes, "Yeah, that's Hugh Laurie when he was young." I'm going, wow, because I'm only really familiar with him through House, you know, House, and
so different.
I bet. So yeah, he's a really good actor. You could tell. but he's got a good comedic timing.
Yeah. Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry together are next level. Like, I definitely recommend watch Blackadder and Hugh Laurie. Michael says season 1 of Blackadder is worth skipping. I disagree, but hey ho.
Do you like what is the other show that we've been watching over here that you might know? It just escaped me. It was just on the tip of my head until Michael came and put up that comment and he threw me off.
That bastard.
Yeah, I'll have to get your recommendation on other shows.
Yeah, there's loads. Even the creator agrees with me.
Oh, really?
Wow.
How many seasons of Blackadder were there?
Goes up to Blackadder goes 4th, which is Victorian London time. Like each season's a different point in history. No,
Okay.
There's World War One. I think is the last one.
Mm. Yeah, we like to watch all year dramas. My wife and I are, Downton Abbey fans. We like Victoria, The Crown.
Yeah. Yeah, Mike says ends at 4 and then specials. That sounds about right. I agree with him on that.
Okay.
So, I could talk about Blackadder forever. Because, like, I absolutely love it. But you were saying just beforehand about crowdfunding, which I'm presuming this, to my knowledge, is your first crowdfund.
Yeah, that's correct. So, as I mentioned earlier, X-Farce was one of the previous books that we had done. So, because I don't own the rights to the hamsters anymore, which would have been probably a no-brainer to be the thing to crowdfund, I made an arrangement with Dynamite many years ago. So they actually own the intellectual property to the hamsters. So the other thing that most people would have remembered, from my career would have been probably X-Farce. So to me, it just made logical sense to, maybe bring that back, but remaster it. So all the book is all full color, whereas, the older incarnations of the book were just black and white on newsprint. So we decided, why don't we bring back X-Farce, but kind of jazz it up with digital coloring. And not only that, but let's add some new material. So X-Farce is 48 pages. There's no ads. It's all full color on really nice stock. And we promised, we launched it in January and we said we would fulfill it in April. And so we did that. It was more challenging than I remember doing comics, because X-Farce, because of the number of creators involved, there was a lot more communication and deadlines and stuff because there was multiple people. Whereas when you're working on a 32-page book or 24-page book, and it's just you, the writer, artist, letterer, and colorist, there's only like 4 people, which is not that hard to try to get everybody in the same schedule. But on X-Farce, even though we had a majority of the book already drawn, those extra materials that we had never done before, we had about 14 or 15 different talents involved between the different covers, the different, Mike Barron writes like a 3-page story, and then we have to have an artist for that. And then we have a colorist and a letterer for that. So every story, even though it's only 3 pages or 5 pages, it involves 3 or 4 different people in it. So even though it was only like 20 pages of new material, it was it seemed like a lot more work.
Yeah,
But it came together.
That.
Yeah, well, your Twisted has probably got different people in it.
There was it's been a lot more, not running around, but like a lot more organisation than I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah. Yeah, you need like some kind of project management software to make sure everybody's on the same, deadline and stuff. So we did all right with that. I learned, what to do and not to do without too much risk. I set the crowdfunding goal fairly low. I mean, it's only like, I think I only set it for like $2,000 US. And fortunately, I'm in the position, Jacobus, where it's, this isn't my primary job. It's more of a hobby and a second, labor of love for me. So I had the means to publish this even if I didn't hit the goal. And so we went out and we got all the old Parody Press people that we could contact back together again. And then we reached out to some newer CG talent, to do covers, like Rob Willis does a cover for us. And then Mark, who was the guy that works for the X-Men animated series, I hadn't communicated to him like in 20 years. And I just reached out to him, and thankfully he was between jobs, so he could actually do the X-Cons cover that that I showed you. So it was a lot of fun, but it was also at the same time, it was kind of a lot of trial and error. You had to, we had to find a new printer. There was, the whole learning Indiegogo for the first time, how it works. And so it was good. I think I recommend that for anybody. I think I've heard other people say that are crowdfunding veterans, like, don't make your first project like the thing that's your blockbuster. Maybe go in with a smaller project first so you can get your feet wet, and then once you got that under your belt, you'll be more prepared to do the next thing. So we're trying to build up. X-Farce, we're at $7,800 US on that, and now Beard Zerker has a much higher stretch goal, which is like 7,000, which we're very close to hitting. We only have like 11 days left in our campaign, and so Beard Zerker is all new material. It's not reprint. So this is also drawn by Bill Mouse, but we have a bunch of different variant covers on it. Kanan White, Preston Azevedo, he does a Rainbow the Brute variant. We have you can scroll down if you want to look at it. Jim O'Reilly, he's the guy that did that beautiful piece.
This one.
Yeah, that one. He sent to me after our campaign was already, I already had it planned, but I love it so much that we're probably going to offer it as a 7th cover, but just for a limited amount of time.
Yeah. Where's the shoe one? There's got to be a big picture, isn't there?
Yeah, that's kind of samples of what the inside looks like. This is the cover that Kanan White did for us.
Yeah.
And I have the original artwork for that. I think I have it. Is it right here? Yeah. You want to see what the line art looks like.
Oh, that's amazing.
So a lot of detail. Yeah, he's amazing. He does work digitally a lot, and his rate for digital is a little less than if he did pen and ink. But I said, I want to own this piece, so I paid him. Some of these artists will say, well, if I get to keep the artwork, then it's only this much.
Yeah.
But if you want the artwork, then it's like double the price. And fortunately, I got Kanan when he was able to do something for us, and that's the same with Rob Willis. He's pretty in demand. You kind of have to, if you're planning on using guys that are real popular, you kind of have to get in line and say, well, they might not be able to give you product for like 4 or 5 months, so you have to kind of space out your campaign to accommodate their schedule.
Yeah, I learned the hard way that if you've got your eye on someone, get them straight away, because someone else will steal them from you.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, God damn it.
It helps if, I don't know how you guys work payment. I mean, some people will just say, oh, I'll work for free, just send me comp copies. But some people that are established will, they have a page rate and stuff. So
Yeah.
like Preston's not cheap. The guy that you're kind of getting ready to show.
This
He's
one,
yeah, that's the cover that everybody says, oh wow, it's amazing, and it's painted acrylic, not digital. And he just in the last few days, Jacobus, he just said, I'll let you sell the original artwork if you want on the campaign. So I know it's a pricey price tag. He wants $4,500 US for that cover, but he says, my wife says I've been letting my stuff go for less than it should. So he's so he's trying to test the waters and seeing if someone will pay for this. But somebody might, because this is, according to what I know, this is the first appearance of Rainbow the Brute in print, because Ethan's book doesn't come out until the end of this year. And so we reached out to Ethan, and he graciously said, yeah, you can use Rainbow on your cover. And so that's the cover that he did, which I love. It's very Frazetta.
Awesome cover.
Frazetta-ish. And then you saw the one with She. That's Billy Tucci's character, and this one actually
this one.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, you can go back to that one.
Yeah, I was just showing it.
And then the one with Dax. That Dax is somebody that I met actually through Call Me Mark, because I saw I backed Not Daredevil, and I went to Call Me Mark's page, and I saw this tremendous piece with Not Daredevil fighting, like the KKK. And I wasn't familiar with Dax's work, but I know that people know that I'm a huge Jack Kirby fan. And so I immediately gravitated to love what Dax was doing in that retro 70s Kirby look that he does. And so I reached out to Dax, and I said, we're doing this book called Beardzerker. It's kind of like Thor, but he's got a guitar instead of an axe. And he turned around this beautiful artwork for one of our covers.
Yeah, I love.
Is he working with you guys on anything?
No, not with us.
Yeah.
We've had to cut off people now that wanted to. Like, if they want to work with us, they've got to wait until the next one, because it was getting to a point where we was adding someone, and it was like, right, we need to stop adding people so we can actually get this book done.
Yeah, it starts to become like a, unfortunately, when you're a publisher, you kind of have to make those choices to cut off.
Like, I want everyone to be in it, but they'll have to wait till the next one. We started, it was 24 pages originally, and I think we're on 70 something now.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
So your book is going to be like a 70 plus page comic?
Yeah, it's going to be high 80s to low 90s at a stretch.
Wow. In black and white, probably.
Color, full color.
My wife just texted me, so let me just let her know I'm still here. Hang on. I think so. So we'll probably. How much longer do you normally go on your show, Jacobus? So I can text her.
My plan is to wrap up this Berserker campaign.
Okay.
And then say lovely goodbyes, because Comic Mark starts streaming in about 25-ish minutes.
Perfect. That'll work. Okay.
And we have the CG UK seem to have like unspoken agreement where none of us will stream if someone else is streaming.
Yeah. Speaking of streaming, my bladder needs to stream.
We'll wrap this up very quickly then.
I don't mean to be. No, I'm just kidding. I can hold out for a little while longer, but if you start to see anxiety on my face, I drink this whole cup of coffee and some water, so I'm an old man. Yeah.
So there's 10 days left on Berserker and 91% through, so that's
a good sign.
Too soon. That's pretty much funded.
I think we're gonna get there.
To get that high bump at the end of the campaign, don't you?
Yeah.
So
we're gonna be on. We're gonna be on a couple of pretty well-known streams towards the end of the campaign. We're scheduled with Red Valkyrie and then Michael Bancroft, which is the channel that we launched on. But
yeah,
he's been under the weather, so I'm hoping he pulls through. His wife actually had to fill in on his show last night, which was funny.
Oh, really?
Do you guys ever watch that? I know your time difference is quite. He's in Australia, so his show is 8:00 at night here in the United States for me, but it's only like lunchtime for him. But I think around 8:00 at night, my time for you would be like right dead in the middle of the night for you.
Yeah, I think it's about 3:00 in the morning. The Australian guys go live.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I don't catch many of theirs. I see some on replays, but not live.
Understandable.
Yeah. So before your old man bladder gives out, we what advice would you give to new people coming into the
comic
making?
I think I already said this. Don't quit your day job. Ease into it. And B, don't give up. Don't be afraid of criticism. A lot of the stuff that I did came out of rejection when I was trying to get published by other companies, and so this whole movement of self-publishing is to me a wonderful thing, because you get a level of commitment and excitement that you don't get if you're just working for the big two, working on their characters. You can tell the creators have a much deeper passion for their own creations than for Spider-Man or Superman or whatever. Let's see, what else could I say? Just start small. Humble beginnings. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't feel like you're gonna slay the world with your very first creation, because that's really not realistic unless you made a deal with the devil. But I love this. I mean, it's a fun hobby for me, and for those of us that can make it as a living, more power to you. But I really just don't want to see this art form wither and die, which if you look at the big two, you kind of see that writing on the wall, unless they can, kind of pull it out. But I kind of see this as a big renaissance of. It feels a lot like the excitement that independents had when we were kind of bucking the trend with when Image started, and Marvel and DC were just kind of not treating people as well as they could have. And I think that's kind of what led to the exodus of people like McFarlane and Jim Lee and all those guys. So I think that pretty much does it. Jacobus is just you just don't forget to have fun. That's what the whole thing is about. Is just rekindling our youth and remembering how fun it was to read comics. And I still get giddy when I get packages from people that I think are really talented creators. And I really love this art form, and I hope that what we're doing will inspire all generations to keep it alive, because we wouldn't have things like the Marvel universe or the Walking Dead universe or whatever they've adapted from a comic book into a popular either TV show or movie, if it wasn't for grassroots comic book creators. I think a lot of people just kind of take it for granted, but there's a lot of great ideas out there, and it's so cool to see people like you and Mark and Aria and Alex from Infinity doing all these really cool, fun projects.
That's great. Do you see you going back to full-time comic book making, whether it's through self-publishing like Indigo?
Possibly. I mean, right now my other job, I don't have any plans to retire from that, and it really keeps me quite active. It's not always that way, but I'm a real estate broker here in the States, and right now in my state, in my area, the prices and demand is just going up, out the roof right now. So I kind of have to strike while the iron is hot, because that job allows me to have the luxury of being able to do comic books and pay people what I think is a fair rate. So it's a good balance. I think I would like to do more self-publishing, but I might just, because I'm not as energetic as I used to, I might just kind of have to step back and kind of plan. Right. See what that, I would like to just maybe, instead of self-publishing, maybe just go and write for other people, because that to me is a lot less stressful and time consuming, to work and do side projects and stuff like that. So I've had some offers, and I need to honor those, but they all know that I need to get Beardzerker out first, and then we'll see what's next on the horizon. But is this Twisted? Is this your first book?
Yeah, my first book. I'm doing the lettering for Not Daredevil, which is an absolute pain in the arse.
I'm saying you're doing the flatting, you said? Oh.
No, lettering.
Oh, the lettering. Okay.
Yeah, because the scans are from, 80 years ago. They was made in like the 50s. So yeah, like 70, 80 years ago. None of the quality is perfect. So
right. Yeah.
Oh,
I remember that. We had a book called Apathy Cat, which was a kind of a really cute all ages book, but the creator of that said, I want to import this Robin Hood story that was from the 50s, and I want to insert my characters into this public domain Robin Hood story. So I can remember him taking that old artwork and scanning it, and then he'd have to import and draw his characters into that that old artwork, and then trying to match the lettering of that era by hand. It was really time consuming for him. Is not Daredevil coming out soon?
I don't know entirely, so I don't want to say anything in case it's wrong.
Mm-hmm. It's okay. I supported it, so I'm sure I can go to Indiegogo and see when he said he was hoping to fulfill. But I really want to see it because it looks like it's going to be fun.
I am nearly finished with everything on my end.
Oh, good.
Like I've almost finished what I've got to do on it.
Nice.
That I can confirm. Well, yeah, it's an hour and 40 minutes since we started. So I want to thank the chat and the viewers for joining us, and most importantly, thanking Don Jun himself for
my pleasure.
gracing us with his presence.
I had a great time, man. You're very easy to chat with and very relaxing. I'm ready to just have a nice relaxing afternoon with my wife, and then I got to do a little bit more work today. So I hope you have a good evening over there.
I'm going to take the little one up to bed.
Oh.
And then pretty much do the same myself.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jacobus. I had a good time. I look forward to your campaign when you're getting ready to launch it. Sounds like fun.
Yeah. Well,
all right.
On the bargain bin, we usually do a gay wave. I'm not going to make you do that. So I'm just going to end the stream in